So I had a number of different people, I think, fell into that role model category. I had two grandmothers and a mother who were independent, professional ladies who worked their whole lives. And I certainly regarded all three of them as people that I would talk to about my life and ambitions. But then in a more general sense, I don't know if people will probably be too young to remember this now, but there used to be a series on ITV at lunchtime that was all about it was called Crown Court. It was all about court cases. But if you think about the 70s, what was really important about that programme was that it actually showed ladies as independent, professional ladies making their own decisions, winning cases and helping their clients. And if you think that at the same time most of television was kind of Charlie's Angels or the Dukes of Hazzard, that kind of gives you a slight comparison to what most programmes were portraying women as being. So that was actually quite an important thing in my life. I very definitely did. I don't think that terminology was really used during my early career, but if I look back on what happened, then I would say that Bronick Mazziada at Hiscox definitely was a sponsor. He came into Hiscox completely new. He was very young. He'd come from a consultancy background, and therefore he looked afresh at what Hiscox was trying to achieve. And I think he felt that some of the things that were new and innovative within Hiscox were perhaps not getting the airtime that they should get. And I was just very lucky that he came in just as I was creating some new products for emerging professions. And I think he understood them, and he really liked the idea of them and felt they would add something to Hiscox. And he really took them and myself up and really sort of promoted their significance within the business, I suppose. And I hadn't really had any kind of relationship with Robert Hiscox himself up till that time. And I think Bronick certainly promoted that as something that was important in what was at the time a sort of largely Hiscox owned business. So I'm very grateful to him for the support that he gave me. The pivotal moment was really deciding that I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I did a law degree, and I think up until then I'd always assumed that I was going to be a lawyer. And so having decided that actually I didn't think the law as a career would suit me, I was kind of at sea, really. But I had two things that were absolutely imperative for me. One, I wanted to live and work in London. That was my big ambition. And the other one was that I sort of got this notion that the city, was presenting a lot of opportunity, because Margaret Thatcher had come in 79 and the city had kind of exploded as a kind of an opportunity for young people. And so one way or another, it was those two things that really drove me. And then I was fortunate that I was introduced to a very good Lloyd's broking business, which was then called Bowerings, but is now part of Marsh. And they had a graduate programme, and that kind of got me started in the London insurance market. We are a professional body, so a lot of my time is spent on thinking about how our profession of insurance and financial advice is kind of serving the public, I suppose. If you have a royal charter, it states very clearly that your purpose is to secure and justify the confidence of the public. And at the moment, we know that actually there's quite an issue with the public's relationship with financial services generally, but that includes insurance. And we know that actually, consumers do have some real concerns about how trustworthy and reliable financial services is. And yet, if you're in it, you obviously know how critically important insurance and financial planning are to most people's lives, and you know what a force for good it can be. So a lot of my time is spent looking at areas where, for whatever reason, our interaction with consumers doesn't seem to be working properly, and then actually taking action to do something about it. Actually, when I joined my organisation, one of the things that was interesting for me was that when I asked people, both junior and senior, to describe the business, they didn't give me a purpose. What they did was they went straight to, this is what my job is and this is what I do. So it became clear to me that one of the things that was missing in our business was a very clear purpose statement, mission statement, whatever you want to call it. And I was very lucky because we have a royal charter. It wasn't very complicated to actually find what that was. It's actually up on the wall. But I think, like a lot of organisations that have been around for a long time, sometimes the obvious actually becomes the least transparent. So a big part of what we've been doing the last year is pulling out those elements of the Royal Charter and actually, getting everyone to talk about them and to talk about the issue of public trust and to talk about our purpose as a professional body to secure and justify the confidence of the public in our profession. And so I'm hopeful that now, that gives me a good place to start whenever I'm talking to anyone who's joining our organisation, whether they're junior or senior. And I would hope that everyone in the organisation would now be clear what our purpose is. When people hear the word leadership, I think there's an inclination to think that leadership is all about you. It's kind of, that you're very charismatic, that you take that hill, you're at the front of the troops, all of that stuff. Actually, a lot of leadership is actually taking the time and trouble to give your people or your organisation a sort of authentic sense of purpose that is crucial to leadership, but then actually, in a funny way, empowering everyone else to get on with it. So a lot of leadership is actually getting out of the way, as opposed to the concept of sitting on the big horse and sort of leading everybody across the battlefield. So I do try and get that across to people. And I think that is actually quite important because I think historically there's been a view that male characteristics fit better into that concept of leadership because everyone's seen the sort of battle-ready type of attitude towards leadership. And I think a lot of women actually find that quite off-putting and difficult to relate to. But if you talk more about the creation of a sense of purpose and then the motivation and empowerment of organisations and staff to get on with it, actually that seems to appeal to all sections of people. Gosh, that's a really good question. I don't think anybody gets that 100% right. There's always good thinking about it. I think the key is that you do need to get a mix of people, and that can be a bit uncomfortable sometimes because there's no doubt that we all have preferences about the way we like to work, the kind of people that we feel most comfortable with, all of those good things, and that is great, but often it's the more uncomfortable conversations or the more challenging conversations that can lead to better decisions. I think empathy is probably one of the greatest attributes. I mean, leadership takes lots of different forms, but I think to be sustainable, you do actually have to learn to care, if that's the right way to put it. I mean, a lot of people who end up in leadership positions are people would probably say drive, because that tends to be the characteristic that sort of gets you into a leadership position. But if you're not careful, drive can, drive you can drive you in all sorts of strange directions. And one of the big things of leadership is to take people with you, because you can you know, that thing of take that hill and everybody just waves you off and says, great, when you've taken it, come back and, you know, tell us about it. That's not really what organisations want. They actually want the leader to take the organisation with them. And I think you're going to struggle to do that unless you have, you know, quite a high level of empathy. I've actually got two, I suppose, one official mentor and another mentor who I asked to do some work with me because I was working on quite a difficult project, and he had a lot more experience than me of that particular technical area. And I also have two reverse mentors within the organisation. One, because I'm not the most technologically savvy person, so I like to have somebody sort of at least attempt to keep me up to date with what's going on there. And then the other one is just really so that I can feel how things are for people at a sort of entry level in our organisation, and whether our messaging and stuff is getting through to them. I think just doing it. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I've worked in probably 15 or 16 different kind of leadership roles. I mean, leadership per se is always the same in a way, but the environment in which you're doing it means that it can feel very, very different. And every time you approach it, you're coming into a different set of business circumstances or life circumstances or project circumstances, and you're working with completely different people. So I think as long as you keep doing it, you're going to learn, you know, every single day. And I love that. I love that. And I always encourage people as well to say, don't just try leadership in your own business environment, because you can get a bit stale doing that, or you can apply very similar methodology always to a business. So I always encourage people to either lead projects that are pro bono or outside your expertise. So go and do something for a charity, or, you know, go and be a school governor, or, you know, or lead a market project where you've got to bring lots of different people together, because it is amazing how you might think you've cracked it if you've been doing leadership for a while, but it's nothing like putting yourself into a completely different environment to find that no, you have to start all over again and think about it in a different way. So I think that's a very healthy thing to do.